Welcome back to the deep dive. I have to say, looking at the calendar, it is officially January 2026.
It is.
We've got AI agents handling our scheduling, we're seeing the first commercial electric flights, and yet the topic we're diving into today is Telnet.
Telnet. It feels a little bit like time travel, doesn't it?
It really does.
Like, finding a fossil in your living room.
A fossil that bites. I mean,
So-
Telnet, I have these distinct memories of using it in university to check library catalogs or play those old text-based games.
Maybe these, yeah.
Exactly. It belongs in a museum right next to the floppy disk and the dial-up modem, but apparently reports of its deaths have been greatly exaggerated.
Greatly. And unfortunately, it's not just hanging around as, a piece of nostalgia.
No.
It is causing some very real, very modern headaches. We're looking at a brand new emerging threat report published just a few days ago on January 28, 2026 by the research team at Psychognito.
And this isn't just a, hey, you should update your software kind of memo, is it? They found something specific, something critical.
Exactly. It's a new CVE.
Yeah.
The identifier is CVE-2026-24061.
Okay.
And the headline is Authentication Bypass.
Right. Which are two words that should never, ever go together when you're talking about network security.
Never.
So I think our mission for this deep dive is pretty clear. We need to figure out how a protocol from the actual dawn of the internet is still tripping up modern organizations.
Yeah.
We're going to unpack exactly how this bypass works because the technical details sound fascinating. And we need to talk about why this forgotten tech is so often the biggest risk sitting on your network.
That really is the theme here. We spend so much time worrying about the front door, the shiny new web apps, the cloud portals.
Right.
And we forget we left the basement window open back in, 2015?
Or earlier. So let's start with the culprit. The report specifies this vulnerability affects GNU Inetutils. Now, for those who don't know, is that just a fancy name for Telnet?
Not exactly, no. Think of GNU Inetutils as sort of the Swiss Army knife of networking for Unix and Linux systems. It's a package that includes a bunch of classic tools, FTP, Talk, RJ, and yes, the Telnet server. It's open source, it's reliable, and crucially, it comes pre-installed or is easily available on almost every Linux distribution out there.
Okay, so it's ubiquitous. It's the standard issue kit. If you spin up a Linux server, there's a good chance bits of this are just, lurking on the drive.
Precisely. And that's why the scope is so concerning. We aren't talking about some niche piece of software bought by 3 companies.
Right.
We are talking about a fundamental building block of the entire Linux ecosystem.
Let's get into the mechanics of this glitch then. The report calls it an authentication bypass. Now, typically when I think of hacking, I think of brute forcing a password or, stealing a credential key. But a bypass sounds different.
It is. It's much more elegant and, in a way, much more dangerous.
How so?
Well, think about how a Telnet session usually starts. It's a conversation, right?
Yeah.
You connect, the server says login,
Yeah.
you type a name, it says password, you copy the password, the server checks that against its list, and if it matches, it opens the door.
Simple. The bouncer checks your ID. If your name is on the list, you get in.
Exactly. But with CVE 2026-24061, there is a logic error in the code that handles that initial handshake. It specifically involves how the server processes the environment variables or the initial negotiation data sent by the client.
Okay, stick with me here. I want to understand the logic error part. Is it like the bouncer just falls asleep?
It's more like the bouncer gets confused by a specific weird gesture. The vulnerability stems from, and I'm quoting, improper enforcement of authentication logic.
Okay.
Basically, if an attacker sends a specifically crafted sequence during that initial setup, maybe a certain combination of null values or malformed environment variables, the server's code enters a state where it just assumes authentication has already happened.
Wait. So the code essentially checks a box that says user verified without actually verifying the user.
That is exactly it. The return value from the check function is misinterpreted. Or the whole check is skipped because the code thinks it's dealing with a different type of session.
And the result is?
The result is that the server drops you directly into a command prompt.
No password required.
No username, no password, you just walk right in.
That is terrifyingly simple. It's like walking up to a locked door, jiggling the handle in a specific rhythm, and the lock just disengages.
And because it's a logic error, it's fast. You don't have to spend hours guessing passwords. It's instantaneous.
So once the attacker is in, once they've bypassed this check, what are we looking at? Are they just seeing a welcome banner, or do they have real power?
This is Telnet we are talking about. It was designed for remote administration. It is an interactive protocol. Once you bypass authentication, you have a shell.
A shell, so a command line interface on the host machine.
Correct. You are sitting at the terminal. Now, the privileges you have, they depend on how the Telnet service was configured. Best case scenario, you're a low-level user. But even then,
You have a foothold. And we know what happens next.
right, attackers rarely stop at the foothold. They use that access to look around. They check the kernel version, see if there's a local privilege escalation exploit they can use.
They scan the internal network.
They look for hard-coded passwords in configuration files, all the usual stuff.
So the bypass is just the beachhead. Once they're on the beach, they can start moving inland toward, I don't know, the database or the domain controller.
Exactly. And because they are inside the perimeter now, they are bypassing all those fancy firewalls you spent millions on.
This brings me to the question that I think a lot of listeners are probably shouting at their device right now.
I think I know what it is.
Who on earth is still running Telnet on the open internet in 2026? I mean, every Security 101 guide written in the last 20 years says disable Telnet, use SSH.
You would think so, right? If you were building a startup today, you'd never dream of installing it. But the internet isn't just made of new startups. It's a geological layer cake of technology.
The zombie infrastructure.
That's a great term for it. The Psychognito report breaks down the victims into a few categories, and it's really revealing. First, you have the legacy Unix and Linux servers.
The old load-bearing servers that no one wants to touch.
Exactly. The box in the basement that processes payroll or manages some specific database. It was set up in 2012. The admin who set it up retired in 2018. Nobody knows the root password, so nobody touches it. It just hums along.
And it was probably set up back when enabling Telnet by default was more common, or maybe it was enabled for a quick fix and just never turned off.
Right. Then you have the second category, which is arguably scarier, embedded systems and industrial devices.
Oh, this is the IoT stuff.
But not just consumer IoT. We're talking about operational technology, OT.
Yeah.
Think about a factory floor or a utility company. You have these ruggedized routers, industrial controllers, maybe older medical devices in a hospital.
Oh.
A lot of these devices run a stripped-down version of Linux. They use GNU Inetutils because it's lightweight and it's reliable. The people managing the factory might not even know that their big CNC machine has a Telnet server listening on port 23.
It's just part of the firmware.
It's just there.
That is a nightmare scenario. You have a critical piece of infrastructure, a medical device or a power controller running a vulnerability that lets anyone just walk in.
And you can't just patch a medical device, right? You have vendor certifications, FDA approvals. It's not like updating an app on your phone.
We'll get to the mitigation headache in a minute, but there's a third category the report mentioned that I found really relatable. Development and staging environments.
Ah, the forgotten hosts. This happens constantly. A developer needs to test some code. They spin up a cloud instance. They turn off security protocols because they just want to get the code working. And, authentication is getting in the way.
I'll just turn off the firewall for an hour to debug this.
Exactly. And then it's Friday afternoon. They go home. The project gets shelved or merged, whatever. But that instance...
It stays running.
It stays running. It's costing the company pennies an hour, so nobody notices it on the bill. But it's sitting there, facing the internet, with Telnet open, and now bypassable.
It's amazing how much of cybersecurity just comes down to cleaning up your room.
It really is. Psychognito calls these unmanaged assets, and they are the sweet spot for attackers because nobody is watching them.
So we have the vulnerability and we have the potential victims. What is the status of the threat right now? The report came out late January. Are we seeing active attacks?
The report states that at the time of publication, there were no confirmed public reports of active exploitation in the wild.
Okay, so we can breathe a little sigh of relief.
Absolutely not. In fact, you should probably be holding your breath.
I figured you'd say that. Why?
Because of the race condition we are in right now. The vulnerability is public. The details of where the glitch is, GNU Inetutils, are public. Reverse engineers are looking at the code right now.
They're trying to build a skeleton key.
They're building a proof of concept, a PC. Once a working script exists that can trigger this bypass, it will be uploaded to exploit databases. And the second that happens,
the automated scanners pick it up.
Yep. We are talking about a human hacker manually typing in IP addresses, are we?
No, we're talking about botnets.
Exactly. There are engines like Shodan or, unauthorized botnets that scan the entire IPv4 address space continuously. They rattle every single doorknob.
And right now, they're just checking to see if the door is there. But soon, they will have a tool that just opens it.
That's it. Telnet is already one of the most scanned ports because it's known to be insecure. If you add an authentication bypass to that, it becomes a free-for-all. The barrier to entry drops to zero. You don't need skill, you just need the script.
And I imagine detection is a nightmare. If I'm a defender looking at my logs, what do I even see?
That's the real gotcha. Usually you look for failed logins. Alert! 500 failed attempts from IPX. But here, the login doesn't fail.
The system thinks it's exceeded.
Right. The logic error makes the system believe authentication was valid. So your logs might just show session established. Unless you are monitoring specifically for the length of the session or the commands entered, it just looks like valid traffic.
That is insidious, the invisible intruder. So let's talk solutions. The house is on fire, or at least the kindling is set. What do we do?
The official technical answer is patch. Check the GNU Inetutils advisories. Your Linux vendor Red Hat, Debian, Ubuntu will release a backport or an update. You need to apply it.
Okay, that's standard advice, but I feel like we need to be more aggressive here.
We do. The real advice, the advice that any security architect will give you is kill it with fire. Disable Telnet.
Turn it off.
Completely. There is almost zero legitimate reason to use Telnet on an internet-facing system in 2026. It sends everything in plain text.
Can we pause on that for a second? Plain text. What does that actually mean for the listener?
It means if you and I are at a coffee shop and you Telnet into your server and I'm running a simple sniffer program on the Wi-Fi, I can see everything you type.
Everything.
I can see your username, I can see your password, I can see the confidential data you are reading. It's like writing your secrets on a postcard and mailing it through the system.
So even without this specific bypass bug, Telnet is basically a security hole by design.
Exactly. SSH secure shell replaced it decades ago because SSH is encrypted. So fixing the bug is good. Removing the protocol is better.
But I want to push back on that for a second. Playing devil's advocate here, you mentioned those industrial controllers earlier. The MRI machine, the legacy payroll server. In the real world, just turn it off isn't always an option, is it?
You're right. It's easy for me to say disable it from a podcast studio. It's much harder for a sysadmin who knows that if they disable Telnet, the factory line stops moving.
Right. Sorry, boss, we lost $1 million in production today, but hey, we're secure against CVE 2026-24061.
That doesn't fly. So if you must keep it, and I mean, if it is absolutely mission critical, you have to isolate it.
Compensating control.
Exactly. Put that device behind a VPN. Use a firewall to restrict access so that only one specific trusted internal IP address can talk to it. Never, ever let it face the public internet.
So it's about containment. If you can't kill the zombie, you lock it in a very, very secure cell.
Precisely.
But this leads us to the biggest problem of all. We can talk about patching and isolating, but that assumes you know the server exists in the first place.
And that is the crux of the problem. You cannot patch what you do not know you own.
This is where the context from the Psychognito report gets interesting. They talk a lot about attack surface management. It sounds like buzzword bingo, but the concept is actually pretty grounded.
It is. The old way of doing security was inventory. You know, you ask the IT director for a spreadsheet of all the servers.
And the spreadsheet is always 6 months out of date.
Or 6 years.
Yeah.
Psychognito's approach, and really the modern approach to ASM, is outside in, meaning you don't look at your own spreadsheets. You look at your organization the way an attacker does. You scan the internet. You look for your domain names, your IP ranges, your cloud buckets. You look for the stuff that isn't on the spreadsheet.
You're essentially hiring a friendly robot to rattle your own doorknobs before the bad guys do.
Exactly. They map the unknown and unmanaged assets. And when they find an IP address that belongs to you, and they see port 23 is open, and they see the banner for GNU Inetutils,
They raise the alarm.
they prioritize it.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing. Not all bugs matter. A bug on a server that is deep inside your network with no internet access is a low priority. A bug like this one on a public-facing server, that is a drop everything and fix it now emergency.
It helps you cut through the noise.
It does. And they also mention verification, because how often have we seen this? A team patches a server, then 3 months later, the server crashes. They restore from a backup.
A backup from 6 months ago, before the patch.
And suddenly, the vulnerability is back. Continuous monitoring means you are constantly checking to make sure the doors you locked stay locked.
So let's try to summarize this deep dive. We have CVE 2026-24061. It is a logic error in the GNU Inetutils Telnet server that allows an attacker to bypass authentication entirely. It's like a magic skeleton key.
A skeleton key for a lock that shouldn't even be on the door anymore.
Right, and the victims aren't the high-tech startups. They are the ghosts in the machine. The legacy servers, the forgotten dev environments, the industrial equipment we rely on but rarely update.
And the solution is to find them, using that outside-in perspective, and then either patch them or, ideally, retire the protocol entirely.
It really is a wake-up call about digital hygiene. We get so obsessed with the next big thing, quantum hacking, AI-driven malware. But sometimes the biggest threat is just the junk we left in the digital attic.
Complexity is the enemy of security, but so is complacency. The things you ignore are the things that will bite you.
So here's the thought I want to leave our listeners with today. We all worry about the 0-day in the software we bought yesterday. But let's turn the mirror around.
I think I know what you're going to ask.
How many digital doors did you leave unlocked 10 years ago that you have completely forgotten about?
That is the scary question.
Is there a server you spun up for a hackathon in 2018? Is there a backup router for a branch office that closed 3 years ago? Who is watching those?
If you aren't watching them, I guarantee you someone else is scanning for them right now.
On that cheerful note, thank you for breaking this down.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder that in cybersecurity, the past is never really past.
Always a pleasure. Go check your firewalls, everyone.
Stay curious, check your logs, and please, for the love of all that is holy, turn off Telnet. We'll see you on the next deep dive.